The Mekong is one of the mightiest rivers of Asia. With its source high in the heart of the Tibetan Himalayas, it flows more than 4,000 kilometers before spilling into the South China Sea. It's a major channel of communication that enriches the whole Indo-Chinese peninsula with its generous silt, and between the 8th and 15th century played a crucial role in the development of the Khmère Empire and the influence of its capital, Angkor. The borders of the Khmer Empire went well beyond present-day Cambodia. In the 12th century, Angkor's golden age, the Khmer kings ruled over a vast territory made up of a good part of Laos, Burma, and Thailand. Towards the south, their power extended all the way to the Mekong Delta. In other words, all of South Vietnam. With wars of dynastic succession, repeated invasions by the armies of Champa, Vietnam, and Siam, which is present-day Thailand, the history of the Khmer Empire was not a peaceful stream, even though, like the Mekong, it was sacred. They abandoned Angkor, their renowned capital, in 1432, and that marked the beginning of their decline, which ended in the 18th century when the Vietnamese conquered the province of the Mekong Delta. From that point on, the Khmer Empire, which had shrunk to the borders of present-day Cambodia, ceased to exist. Traveling on the Mekong, we will cross a country made up of rice paddies and canals, rivers and orchards, a world that the ancient Khmers called Chen La Do, that is, the Mekong Delta. The Vietnamese emperors of the Nguyen dynasty did much more than just conquer the delta. They regulated it. They drained the swamps, dredged the canals, and dug new ones. Ever since the 19th century, new populations have continued to migrate to the delta, attracted by its agricultural riches and its thriving economy. The river traffic is more and more dense, but the peaceful sampans of the old days have given way to thousands of boats laboriously crisscrossing the canals of the delta that have turned into veritable thoroughfares. Leaving our cruise boat behind at Tan Chau on the Mekong, we follow the canal that leads to Chau Dock. A trading center with a population of 100,000, Chau Dock is situated on the shores of the Ba Sac River, one of the arms that make up the Mekong Delta. Cu Long, or 9 dragons, as the Vietnamese call it. There are practically no bridges in the cities of the Delta, so to cross even the narrowest channel, like here at Chau Dock, you have to take the ferry. These ferries are just as much a part of the visual landscape of Vietnam as the conical hats made of rice straw. The tormented history of the region is reflected in the ethnic mix of Chao Doc. There are Chinese traders from Canton, Cham, remote descendants of the inhabitants of Champa, a maritime kingdom that used to extend to the shores of Vietnam, and also the Khmère, who remained in the region after it was made part of Vietnam. So in Chao Doc there are Buddhists, Hindus, and Caodaists. And from this diversity was born a sort of religious amalgamation that is neatly summed up in the surprising Tai Yan Pagoda, just a few kilometers outside of town. In another part of town, the district where the Cham community lives, which is centered around the mosque.
The Cham in Anyang province are Muslims. They are the descendants of the Malaysian navigators who came and settled here to do business. Since then, since their arrival, Islam has been adopted here. In fact, the Cham of Anyang came from Cambodia. They came following the emperor, Nguyen. The Cham dug the Vinh Tay Canal at the request of the emperor. That was about 100 years ago.
Leaving Chao Doc by the road, we head for Ba Chuk, a village situated right on the Cambodian border. Ba Chuk was a quiet, uneventful town until the Khmer Rouge came to power in 1975. In order to lend legitimacy to his bloodthirsty totalitarian regime, Pol Pot portrays himself as the heir of the great Khmer Empire of Angkor. He orders his army to cross the border and attack the Vietnamese enemy on this territory that used to be Cambodian until the beginning of the 19th century.
I remember I was already living here at the time. It was the 15th day of the lunar month. The North Vietnamese army had pulled back, and that was when the Khmer Rouge came. They came over Elephant Mountain. As the army was gone, the Khmers killed all the people who had taken refuge in the pagoda, around 400 people. They slaughtered them all. Then, the people who had stayed outdoors, they took them out near the rice paddies, and they shot them all. There were mass graves of 300 to 400 people all around here. It was not until a year later that the villagers brought back the remains to place them here. Yes, I know that this used to be Cambodian land, but since they dug the Vinte Canal, that's been the border with Cambodia, and this region has become Vietnamese.
Trước năm 78 người Khmer ở đây sống vẫn rất đông, nhưng mà họ có ở từng nhóm chứ không có ở
Before 1978, there was quite a number of Khmer here, and there still are a lot.
Từng nhóm vậy đó, cũng còn đông lắm. Mình cũng vẫn trao đổi như quan hệ như thường nha, coi như là
We treat them normally.
bình thường vậy chứ không có gì hết.
We don't treat them any differently.
Sau lúc đó bên Khmer đỏ
Even though we know that at the time of the Khmer incursions, certain Khmer living here were helping them.
Bên này họ hưởng ứng lên, họ tiếp tay với cái đám Khmer đỏ nữa, nhưng mà một ít gì thôi.
We know all about that, but we didn't carry out any reprisals.
Rồi thôi cũng bỏ qua luôn. Ở trong tôn giáo của tứ ân hiếu nghĩa,
I was appointed guardian by the clergy of the cult of gratitude. My work as guardian consists of explaining the meaning of the monument to the visitors, and also keeping the register of offerings that serve for the upkeep of the temple.
The Tonle Pandao is waiting for us in Tan Chau, where we resume our cruise down the Mekong. Next stop, Kai Bay, 120 kilometers to the south, in the heart of the delta. The end of the day is drawing near. While the sun bathes the rice paddies with its golden light, little ferry boats continue their endless shuttling from one bank to the other. On board the Tonle Pandao, life has finally settled into its cruising speed. Kai Bay is an important river junction where a number of small canals flow into the Mekong. Over time, the favorable geographical situation has given rise to a floating market here. But Kai Bay is not a retail market. There's no noisy hubbub here. The traders aren't here to talk about the weather, they're here to do business. The large sampans that have dropped anchor here belong to the buyers from the neighboring villages. The smaller boats that are milling about them are the sellers, small farmers from the many villages scattered throughout this part of the delta.
Mùa này là bán xài nhiều, bán xài ngon nhất á. Right now it's mangoes that bring the best price. It's the season, so they're selling really well. Grapefruit aren't selling as well. I grow most of the fruit on my plot of land. I buy the rest. I live right nearby. That's why I come sell on this market. The other markets are too far away. I can't get to them with my boat.
All of these small boats come from the orchards. The farmers come here to sell fruit or flowers. I buy and then resell in town, and I make between 500 and 1,000 dongs a kilo. I have some room left on my boat, so I'll stay around to buy some more produce before I leave.
Going up the small canal that leads to the center of the town of Kai Bay, we pass other sampans loaded with fruit. The soil of the delta, enriched by the silt of the Mekong, is so fertile that the orchards are like gardens of Eden. The harvests are so abundant, they have to find different ways of selling the produce. In this little shop, they're processing longans. The little yellow fruits are first of all dried over a wood stove. Then they patiently pick the longans. The golden pulp will be used for jams, or will go into the local sweets. Leaving Kai Bay, we head for one of the Delta's most active towns, My To. As we penetrate into the Delta, the Mekong widens out. The captain and his Vietnamese pilot sharpen their lookout, for the nature of the river traffic has changed. Now there are freighters along with the sampans, the ferries, and the dinghies. We drop anchor in the middle of the river, not far from My To. This last port of call will give us the opportunity to discover other aspects of life in the Delta.
The inhabitants of the delta are water folks. They are children of the water. They live on the water. That's how it's always been. All their activities take place on the water. The Mekong plays a very important role in the economy of the delta region. Firstly, thanks to the silt that fertilizes the delta, which is a huge rice bowl. It also contains a vast quantity of fish and shrimp. And for a good part of the region's inhabitants, fishing is their livelihood. In addition, 60% of the agricultural produce is shipped via the Mekong. There are several different ways of fixing the silt. You can either use the water hyacinths or the roots of the mangrove trees. We also dig small ditches that crisscross the orchards. With the water from these ditches, we can irrigate and water the plantations. And above all, the silt contained in this water enriches the soil and nourishes the plants and trees.
Going up the canals that weave a network through the heart of the delta, we arrive at a sort of aquatic garden where only small boats can circulate. This is Unicorn Island. Now, all the tourist excursions to the Mekong Delta make a stop here on this fruit-growing island, a financial windfall for certain of its inhabitants. On the other hand, there are other growers determined to carry on their activity and continue to live off the fruit crops, the treasure of Unicorn Island.
The soil on this little island is ideal for fruit growing. However, it's not the right soil for other crops like rice. All the growers on this island cultivate fruit trees. Grapefruit trees, longan trees. Before we could sell longans for 6,000 to 7,000 a kilo. But there are too many of us now, so the prices have dropped, and a lot of growers are starting to cut down the longan trees to grow something else. My husband picks the longans. I go and sell them. He cuts the branches. He sorts them. As for me, my job is to put the fruit in the baskets, and then I take them to the market. Of course, there are people who come to buy the fruit here, but normally I prefer to go to the market myself. If we sell here, the price is much lower, less profit. The dock is right in front of my house. It's easy, and the boat takes me straight to the Mito market. I'm used to living here. When I have to stay in town overnight, I don't get a wink of sleep. I need the peace and quiet of my island. My son is studying in town. When he comes home, he finds this place too calm, too depressing. But me? What would I do in town? My life is here. I don't know how to do anything else but grow trees.
From the 17th century on, the region of the Delta came under Vietnamese influence, even though it was still officially part of the Khmer Empire. The town of Mito was founded in 1680. It was a rather original birth, for it took place following a referendum. The question was, should we or should we not allow the Chinese refugees from Taiwan to settle in the region? These Chinese, who have since become Vietnamese, have done a lot to make Mito one of the most prosperous cities of the Delta. Located along the banks of the canal, Mito's central market is one of the liveliest and most colorful of the entire Delta. Mito is not only the hub for the small farming islands scattered throughout the arms of the Mekong, it's also the port that serves most of the towns of the neighboring province, Ben Tre. But the traffic is so dense here that the ferries are much larger than the little ferries at Chao Dock or Kai Bay. region of My Tô, there are so many boats in circulation, it's probably easier to find a shipyard than a garage mechanic.
You can find three kinds of boats here. The boats that came from central Vietnam, which are used for squid fishing, the boats that are used for transporting construction materials to other provinces of Vietnam, and then the boats that are used to transport rice to the ports where it will be exported. We still build the boats in the same way that we used to. The only difference is that the tonnage has increased. Before, they used to have a very slender form, because these seagoing boats had to slice through the waves. The ones we build now are wider. We give them a more rounded shape, because they have to transport a greater tonnage, and it's a question of return on the investment. Before, they would paint eyes on the prows of the seagoing vessels. It was the tradition. Now, on the more modern boats, the only thing they put is the registration number. But for the cargo boats, we continue to paint on the eyes, like in the old days. The design is different for each boat, but you can't do just anything. There's a certain tradition that needs to be respected.
We've never seen so many motorcycles and trucks since we've been in Vietnam. Saigon, the economic capital of Vietnam, is only about 50 kilometers from My Tô. The easygoingness of the northern delta villages seems to have disappeared. For the first time during the trip, we can feel the tensions that reign in the big cities. And yet, just a few hundred meters from the bustling port, we discover the calm and serenity of the rice paddies. To Tran Cao farms this little rice paddy along with his mother and his two brothers.
I've been growing rice all my life. This rice paddy belongs to our family, so this is where I live. The plots of rice paddies usually measure about 1,000, 1,500 square meters. There are others that can go up to 4,000, 5,000 square meters. Ours measures 5,000 square meters. In the region, this is considered to be a fairly good-sized plot. At harvest time, I sometimes go work for others. Growing vegetables brings in more money than growing rice. But you need less money for rice. 400 to 500,000 dongs is enough. With that, you can pay the people that have come to help at harvest time. And it goes to buying the seed and fertilizer. For vegetables, however, you have to invest a lot more money.
We've left Mito. We're still in the Delta region, and this time we're heading up the river that gave Saigon its name. Saigon, which since 1975 has been called Ho Chi Minh City. All along the 80-kilometer stretch of water between Saigon and the sea, we meet an incredible variety of boats. Hydrofoils going from Ho Chi Minh City to the seaside resort of Cap Saint-Jacques on the South China Sea. Old sampans converted into grocery store service stations. According to our pilot, they sell gas cheaper than in the city. This river, which is deep enough to handle freighters and huge container ships, makes Saigon an important link between the interior of Vietnam and the rest of the world. Coming out of a bend in the river, we catch sight of Saigon, with its skyline of modern buildings and huge billboards. The communist regime has not completely gone over to market economics, but they've loosened their ideological grip enough to allow Saigon's commercial instinct to blossom once again. Within this context, and in spite of the increasing air traffic and road transportation with other countries of the peninsula, most of the commercial activity still transits through the port of Saigon.
We are having a very close relationship with our hinterland area, including the Mekong Delta area. In fact, Saigon Port has served the economic development not only of Ho Chi Minh City, but also of the surrounding provinces and the Mekong Delta area. Basically, the Mekong Delta is the rice producing area of Vietnam. So we are exporting more than 4 million tons of rice annually, and most of the rice export goes through Saigon Port. Saigon Port and in fact the ports in Ho Chi Minh City are serving the import-export demand of Cambodia as well. In the form of transshipment using Saigon River and the inland waterway and also the Mekong River. Because the transshipment cost from Ho Chi Minh City to Phnom Penh port of Cambodia is cheaper.
Present-day Saigon has its eyes fixed on the future. Now, the buildings from the French colonial period are no more than mute witnesses of a bygone era. Landmarks of history that Saigon's motorcyclists, there are more than 2.5 million of them, drive by without noticing. Saigon has always managed to survive the trials and tribulations of history. It has been continually nourished by invaders to evolve into something new. Forgotten are the sovereigns of the Khmère Empire, the Champa kings, and the Vietnamese rulers. Forgotten are the Chinese merchants, the French colonizers. And finally, forgotten are the Viet Cong victors and the American soldiers. In 1975, after North Vietnam's victory over the South, Saigon was an outcast. But now the city is triumphant and is being reborn once again. Cho Lon is more than Saigon's Chinatown. It's a city within the city. Even though the inhabitants had been living here for many generations, a good part of them chose to leave the country during the brief Sino-Vietnamese War in 1979. In spite of this episode, Cho Lon remains even today the town's main market. You can find all the necessary ingredients, the plants, leaves, roots, dried animals for Chinese medicine. You can also find most everyday consumer products at Cho Lon. But the star of the stands is definitely rice, and the varieties are countless. There are many pagodas in Cho Lon. Certain were founded by the first Chinese immigrants who came from Canton generations ago. The temples in Cholan still welcome the practicing Buddhists, even though a large portion of today's youth has abandoned spiritual nourishment in pursuit of material goods, with motorcycles at the top of the list.
Motorcycles, of course. It's very important if you live in the city. Me, for example, it allows me to travel quickly even to parts of the town that are furthest from my place. But on the other hand, on account of all these motorcycles, there's too much pollution. They should replace the motorcycles by public transportation, like buses.
It's easier to pick up girls with a motorcycle.
I love the new models. I like the sporty ones most of all.
The central post office of Saigon is undoubtedly the most beautiful of all the buildings inherited from the French administration. It is still in operation, and for the visiting tourists, it evokes the atmosphere of Tonkin, Annam, and Indochina all together. Now, when the ferry boats are taking on endless hordes of motorcycles, Saigon is getting ready to welcome a new type of invader. In a few hours, the tourists will embark on these strange, shark-like vessels with their aggressive bows that are approaching the center of town. Once night has cast its veil over the city, and the waves of motorcycles have resumed their endless rounds through the streets aglow with their headlights, the huge restaurant boats also light up and cast off, packed with tourists, for a voyage to discover Saigon, which has for one night become once again Saigon the Frivolous.